Hello and welcome to the start of a long series of Ratchet & Clank videos. If you love Ratchet & Clank, feel free to hit the subscribe button down below because I'm going to be uploading a ton of stuff and you're going to want to keep up to date on some of these. We're going to be reviewing the original trilogy, 1, 2, and 3, and in between each review, we're going to be talking about my favorite guns, my favorite levels, stuff I didn't like. I also want to compare the original game and its reboot on the PS4, having a little PS2 versus PS4 reboot video, so there's going to be a ton of stuff to look forward to. So if you like that, feel free to subscribe and stay up to date. But for now, let's take a look at our furry little friend and his robot companion and experience their origins. The new millennia has just hit, and Insomniac Games has just released their final game in the Spyro trilogy. To great success, but now it's time to leave Spyro behind, time to move on to new and better ventures. Onto a space reptile? When Insomniacs first started pitching the idea of Ratchet & Clank, they originally decided on a reptile-like space creature who had multiple robot pals with different functionalities to help you through your journey. Obviously, this main concept didn't quite pan out, and after looking through a few more possible animal concepts, the team finally landed on a cat-like species based on its sense of agility. I feel a reptile fits more so with climbing and bouncing off walls, so I'm kind of thinking Insomniac may just be more on the furry side than the scaly side of things. Anyways, the concept of having multiple robots was also scrapped as it was seen as taking away too much from the main character and was eventually died down to just one robot, giving us the dynamic duo we all know and love today, Ratchet and Clank. It's really hard to look back and think about all the hype that was around this game when it was released. I mean, it was released almost 2 decades ago now. I was 9 years old when this game came out, but I still have brief flashes of remembering aspects of it. I remember watching the cartoon channels I used to watch as a kid and seeing the commercial pop up for this space adventure game that, you know, spouted about having all amazing different kinds of guns and gadgets, and I remember being really excited for it. I remember going over to my friend's house who would get to rent new games every weekend, and him picking out Ratchet & Clank the first week it was available due to us both being excited about it coming out. We never got super far through it on our first playthrough because of the difficulty in some areas, but I remember loving the game and eventually coming back to it to beat it. Let's try to jump back into that love and experience the game once again by jumping back into it for the first time in a while. So, let's experience a PlayStation 2 classic. All footage here is recorded through an emulator due to its ability to upscale the PS2 resolutions to 4K. I own the game on PS2 and am able to record it through the PlayStation 2, but it looks really bad. I mean, would you rather watch a video that looks like this, or a video that looks like this? Yeah. We begin our journey with our introduction to Clank as he's born as a mistake in Drek's factory and manages to escape deconstruction after learning of a horrible plan. While escaping, he's shot down and happens to land on Ratchet's homeworld of Veldin, and this is where our journey begins. We now finally have control of our main character and are able to explore a little, getting a feel for our new weapons, the wrench, and the bomb glove. Pretty basic stuff to start with, but a good example of the fun to be had in the future. The controls and how the game feels is pretty dated. You can see that pretty well, and it's hard already knowing that the future games that we'll be talking about improve on this so much with lock-on and strafing. I know you can use the jetpack later in the game to kind of strafe, but it's really not the same at all, and it feels pretty bad to use. We will be talking more about the controls and how the game feels a bit later into the video, but for now, let's just say it's dated, but pretty dang good for 2002 standards. Remember, twin-stick shooters were still in their infancy, especially third-person shooters, so Ratchet & Clank was really paving the way here a bit. Our next stop is planet Novalis, and by stop I mean crash landing. Man, we are already 2 for 2 when it comes to crash landing on planets. Better send Clank back to driver's ed. This is also the first planet where we really get to explore and learn what Ratchet and Clank is really about. As soon as you land on planet Novalis, you're greeted with 2 paths you can venture down, and this becomes a reoccurring pattern in almost every level hereafter, allowing you to explore each planet in multiple ways. Usually 1 or 2 of these paths will lead you to an infobot, a special weapon, a gadget, or even a golden bolt. This planet's path, for example, branches off into 2 separate paths. One leading into a sewer where you find the friendly plumber who gives you an infobot towards planet Iridia, and traveling into the city under attack has a Save the Planetary Chairman who gives us another infobot that leads us to planet Qwark. And here's where things get interesting. Now that we have 2 infobots, there are 2 routes we can take to explore. But if you know the layout of the game, you know that the best route to take would be heading to planet Qwark first to get the grappling hook and infobot for planet Erdora, then head to planet Iridia to get the Trespasser, allowing you to unlock the next infobot on planet Erdora. But it is completely possible for you to take a different route if you want. Let's say you first go to planet Qwark and get the infobot and grappling hook, and then head to planet Eudora after, since you just unlocked that planet, completely skipping Iridia. You could explore this planet and unlock the suck cannon, but would eventually have to head back to Iridia to get the Trespasser to finish off Eudora. It's pretty cool that there are so many different paths and ways you can go about exploring the game. I know when I was a kid there were multiple points where I got stuck, and being able to just go somewhere else and continue a different objective really made the game feel more enjoyable, not being stuck on one specific puzzle and having to just give up. Speaking of planet Iridia, did anyone else notice that Ratchet just kinda left Skid McMarks out there to die? Like, we find his manager, and instead of being like, yo manager, if you go through that weird vent thing over there, it'll lead you pretty much to Skid McMarks, he's just around the corner. Instead of doing that, Ratchet's all like, yo, you know what? Skid McMark's totally dead. You should be my manager, you know? Like, I wanna be famous. Yeah, that doesn't sound too hero-y of Ratchet there, you know? Since I've already talked about Qwark and Eudora a bunch, let's continue to our next main attraction, Nebula G34, a space station and our first Clank experience. One thing I loved about this game was all the different playstyles it throws at you unexpectedly. They're all pretty enjoyable. The first of these is the ability to play as Clank in a few select areas Ratchet isn't able to reach. You can send Clank out to explore instead. Clank is obviously much weaker and not as strong, so it leads to a different playstyle, focusing on controlling smaller robots to help you defeat difficult enemies Clank can't get through by himself. We find a few new gadgets on this space station, including the Hydro Displacer and Grind Boots that we get after defeating our first boss. Nothing crazy, just a giant version of a monster we've already fought. It was kind of challenging and fun, and I definitely have to say I enjoyed it, but not my favorite boss in the series. We also find a Blarg warship that we self-destruct within like 10 minutes of entering it just to get an infobot. I would usually say blowing stuff up is pretty cool, but the reward for blowing stuff up in this is the bane of my existence, Blackwater City. To be fair, this level isn't hard now that I'm older, but 9-year-old Badman got stuck on this area for a long time. Got stuck, had to return the game, and come back to it months later to attempt beating it again. The segment I'm talking about specifically is this race against the clock in the sewers, where you need to rush to the end without drowning. I attempted this for days as a kid and was never able to make it through. A couple months later though, I gave it another try and was finally able to make it through, but you want to know the worst part? After finally getting through that horrible mess, I made it to Quark's trailer and was greeted by a lovely bouncer asking for 4,000 bolts, which I didn't have on me after spending all my money on ammo. Just imagine a small 9-year-old all super excited about finally getting past that horrible section just to be greeted with this disappointment. Luckily, I'm not a kid anymore and was able to get past this segment in like 2 tries now, but still seems kind of evil to lock the rest of the game behind this crazy segment and then have the bonus item locked behind exploring the planet, killing some bad guys, and playing a fun hoverboard race. Speaking of hoverboard races, it's another bonus playstyle I was talking about. This one's pretty cool, allowing you to race on a hoverboard against other racers. There are ramps, boxes to break, and you can even do tricks because, to be cool, you gotta do tricks and... Wait a minute. Ratchet swimming and drowning, going fast, a companion that lets you fly around. Ratchet and Clank is just Sonic and Tails in disguise. Lombax. Now back on track. Later in the game, you also get to use the hoverboard again, and that level has shortcuts and the ability to gain boost by doing tricks. Just another great addition to the game. Over to Quark's HQ, Quark tells us to make it through his crazy obstacle course to prove we can be his new hero buddies and help him save the galaxy before eventually betraying us. I never really understood this part. I mean, if Quark wanted us out of the picture so he could work with Drek to become famous, why bother killing us or even attempting to kill us? Why not just say to Ratchet and Clank when they first meet him, "Oh, thank you for all the information. I'll head to defeat this evildoer. Thank you so much for all your hard work. Here's some bolts. Now head home and let the hero save the day." Bam. Ratchet and Clank are gone back home to relax, unknowing that their whole planet will be blown up very soon by a massive missile that they were never able to stop because they were unaware of it. Putting my crazy fan theories aside, at the end of this level we fight another boss, this time a brand new enemy with some interesting mechanics, but after melting him in the lava below, the Ratchet and Clank catfight begins for the next, 2/3 of the game. Ratchet and Clank are going to be constantly at each other's throats and hating each other because Clank fell for one trap. But by one means or another, they must stay together to get their own problems solved, and they totally don't become best friends again by the end. This plot point always felt a bit strung along, and I was never really a fan of it. I was always kind of annoyed by Ratchet and Clank's weird battle against each other. I mean, to be fair, it gave us some pretty funny segments between Ratchet and Clank, but overall, wasn't worth it. Off to planet Battalion we go. This is again another one of those interesting split points in the game, since you gain access to Orxon and Gaspar on this planet, but since I'm an MLG gamer, I know that I should head to Gaspar first to get my hands on the pilot's helmet so I don't screw myself over on Pokitaru. That's right, I know all the strats. Get on my level! Orxon is probably one of my least favorite planets in the game due to its length, horrible color scheme, annoying enemies, and boring music. Just for an understanding, our first visit to the planet has us explore the world as Clank, since we don't have an O2 mask for Ratchet yet, and this segment goes on for way too long. If it was maybe half as long, it wouldn't be too bad, but having to control these bots and walk back and forth and over and over and over, it's such a drag. The second visit with Ratchet has you chasing this info bot down all over the place while dealing with super annoying enemies the whole time. This is also probably the perfect time to talk about the game's difficulty and why I think it brings down the quality of the game just a little bit. There are 3 specific aspects that lead to this game's difficulty and pretty much every frustration I've had while playing it. Number 1, no lock-on. Unlike the future games in the series, Ratchet & Clank 1 has no lock-on system besides the base auto-aim. There will be many times you're getting chased by an enemy and you want to turn around and start shooting them, or strafe around them while still aiming at them. Sadly, there really isn't any decent way to accomplish this due to how the game handles shooting enemies. You either have to wait for your gun to lock on itself with this automatic green circle that half the time will never actually aim at the enemy you want it to aim at, or completely stop all motion and manually aim with the first person mode. This pretty consistently has you sitting as far back from enemies as possible and slowly walking forward till your gun locks on so you can shoot them from out of their aggro range. At least till later in the game when some enemies' lock-on ranges are twice or even 3 times the distance of yours. Thankfully, by this point in the game, you should have the Visibomb or Devastator to help deal with this issue. The second issue is that enemies have damage lockout. What I mean by this is that after shooting an enemy once, there is a brief period of time before you're able to deal the next piece of damage to them. This can be a good idea in some aspects, making it impossible to just spam all your ammo at an enemy and instantly delete it. But I just don't find it works here. Why use my automatic gun like it's supposed to and waste a bunch of ammo when I can get the same effect by just shooting one bullet, waiting a few seconds for the damage lockout to go away, then shoot a second bullet to finish the enemy off? It becomes very annoying knowing you just wasted a bullet or two because the game decided you aren't allowed to shoot one guy quite yet. The final issue that I had was the checkpoints in the game, specifically in the later levels. There are a ton of tricky areas in the later levels with tons of hard enemies, platforming, and swarms of smaller enemies. One easy slip up in these areas can cause you to die. One misclick and you're off the map, a few too many hits and you're dead as well, and the checkpoint system here does not help this. There are multiple areas in the game I found myself dying and being sent back huge distances to have to try the whole area over again, now with less ammo, unless I decide to spend more bullets to fill back up. 3 planets I can point out that are really bad for this specifically are Pokitaru, Old Tanis, and Drek's fleet. These are pretty much the only issues I have with the game majorly, and they're not even that bad. More annoying than anything, so I guess you can take that as a plus. After finishing up Pokitaru, I took the liberty of purchasing the decoy glove for one reason only. Unlimited money, baby! Yeah, I've never been able to purchase the Ultra Nanotech or the Rhino, so I set up the glitch on Blackwater City, allowing you to farm unlimited bullets away from keyboard, and I left for a few hours while doing other things, and I got up to about 250,000 bolts, which was pretty nice. I mean, I kinda went deaf from the sound of taunting bolts, but it was totally worth it, cause, give me a sec. It was totally worth it because it allowed me to purchase the Ultra Nanotech. And the Rhino.
This thing is heavy! Yeah, try carrying it around in your trench coat for 2 months.
I didn't really use the Rhino at all in the game except for fun the second time I defeated Drek just to see how broken this thing was, and boy is it crazy overpowered and worth it. The Ultra Nanotech was also really helpful. There were plenty of times in the late game that I noticed, wow, if I didn't have Ultra Nanotech, I'd be dead right now. There really isn't too much left to talk about when it comes to the story. There's a pretty cool segment where you get to fly your ship and fight Quark in space, and then there's a couple more planets, and then you also get to go to Drek's space fleet, and for some reason his main ship is like half submerged in water, which doesn't really make sense. I never understood that part. Nah. Fire the lasers! Excuse me? Are you talking back to me? Oh, so you say lasers don't work when they're underwater? Well, you better make them work, or I'll blow you up with Velden! Also, Ratchet and Clank finally make up and they're bestest friends again, and the plot twist is revealed to us that we're heading back to the first level, Planet Velden, to stop Drek from destroying Ratchet's home. I mean, it's kind of like just a horrible wasteland that he was stranded on as a child, but some man's garbage is another man's treasure, I guess. The final boss fight with Drek is pretty challenging and really fun. It has you traveling across multiple pieces of the planet as he blows them up before reaching the final arena, where you must stop him from blowing up the planet by fighting him while also having to worry about pressing the stop button on the ignition lock sequence. It's definitely a great way to end off a fantastic game, and I wasn't let down by this fight at all. Now, there are a few more things I need to go over that are very important. The music, artistic design, weapons, and the post-game. For those of you who haven't taken a chance to sit down and listen to the original Ratchet and Clank soundtrack, I would advise heavily on giving it a listen. It is a fantastic OST with only a few songs that don't hit the mark. The whole design has this futuristic DJ disco vibe to it, and I love it. Some songs like Logging Site also have a hint of old Spyro vibes in them, which is interesting to hear as they expanded from the Spyro the Dragon franchise. The scenery throughout the entire game is just beautiful. Every time you load into a new planet, the game gives you just an outstanding shot of the surroundings. Each time I'll just have to take a minute to rotate my camera around and really appreciate what Insomniac had built here. And it's not just the backgrounds that are fantastic. Each and every one of the playable spaces, enemies, characters, cinematics, and weapons are gorgeous. And speaking of weapons, let's talk a little bit about them. I don't want to get into too many details here since I plan to have a video soon talking specifically about the guns in this game and how I rank them, but overall, for a game that heavily advertised about having tons of weapons and gadgets, it did not disappoint. Each weapon has its own feel and personality to it that makes it feel special. Yeah, some are not that great and underused, but there aren't many of them. The gadgets as well were super fun, especially playing the game the first time, being able to walk up walls, grind down rails, fly through the air with both a helipack and jetpack, and even disguise yourself as a robot to sneak through areas. I loved experiencing all of these for the first time, and playing with them again has been just as fun. The last thing I want to talk about is the post-game. I've never been super into the post-game content of Ratchet and Clank, but it's nice to know that it's there for people who wish to keep playing after beating the game the first time. After your first completion, you're able to restart the game in challenge mode with all your weapons, gold bolts, and a few gadgets. It's not officially called challenge mode yet in the original game, but it is referred to as challenge mode in the release on the PS3. Once you activate challenge mode, there aren't too many differences in the original game. The rate that you receive bolts is increased a little bit, and you gain access to all 10 golden weapons, which are more powerful versions of the original weapons that you have in the game. You're able to purchase these with golden bolts and bolts. On top of challenge mode, there are also a ton of golden bolts hidden around to find and hidden skill points to acquire. While playing through my first time, I was only able to find 3 of these skill points by accident, and there are a ton of them to find. Unlocking all of these items will give you access to some cool stuff in the now unlocked goodies menu. If you're into post-game content for Ratchet, I would say there isn't a ton to look forward to in this original game, but there is at least some stuff there for you to enjoy. And wow, that was a doozy. About 3,860 words of a doozy. That's a lot. Most of my reviews are only about 2,000 words, if that. So, this was a big one, but well worth it to make a fantastic Ratchet and Clank review for all of you. I hope you enjoyed it and get excited for more Ratchet and Clank 2002 content to come while I get ready for the Going Commando review. If there's anything specifically you'd like to see, post it in the comments below. I'm always down there replying. I love seeing all of your comments. Thank you so much. And remember to return every Tuesday and Friday for more content, because I'm going to be trying my best to post stuff every Tuesday and Friday for all of you. And until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Just a quick thank you to my YouTube and Patreon supporters. You guys are so generous, and I thank you a million times over. If anyone else would like to help support the channel and the content I create, feel free to check the description below for links to my Patreon.